The Pistons have sucked over the last couple of years, but I think they're finally ready to make the playoffs. Let's talk about it. The Pistons had a very bad season last year, and I was kind of in the camp that thought they had a chance to maybe make some noise, maybe make the play-in. I think a jump we saw from a team like Orlando Magic or the Indiana Pacers, but they started off the season really bad, had a month when they didn't even win a game, and it was just an overall disaster for the Pistons. They cut out a lot of distractions last year and this year. And what I mean by that is last season, it was very clear that the coach they hired, Monty Williams, was not exactly interested in coaching. When he got fired from the Suns, he very clearly was like, I'm going to take a step back from coaching, maybe take a year or two off, and then see where it takes me after that. And the Pistons were like, no, we're going to offer you the biggest contract in coaching history, and we're going to offer you a contract that you just straight up can't refuse. And that's exactly what happened. Monty Williams ends up taking the job, coming over and coaching the Pistons, but it really never felt like he wanted to be there. And if your coach doesn't want to be there, that kind of sets the tone for the entire team. Another distraction they cut is, they got rid of Killian Hayes, who was a young guy who they finally just said, we're giving up on you, man. You're hurting our team, and we're just going to let you go. And sometimes I know that can be scary. You draft a guy with the 7th pick, and it's like you want him to work out so bad that you're afraid to trade him or cut him for nothing, because that's admitting that you made a mistake. But they did, and I think it's going to help them for the future. It helps free up positions, because straight up, the Pistons have a lot of guards. They have, Cade, Ivy, Marcus Sasser, and it just felt like Killian Hayes was kind of in the way of those guys. And then this offseason, you also let James Wiseman walk in free agency. And while James Wiseman maybe has potential to eventually be something in the NBA, he hasn't been that good recently, hasn't been that good in the NBA. And I don't think you should force yourself to we have to play him because he's the 2nd overall pick and he has this potential. Let him walk. Focus on your young guys, and that's exactly what they did. Also in the offseason, they had some interesting free agency acquisitions. I love the Malik Beasley signing. He is a NBA player. Sometimes that's all you need. A rebuilding team is adding actual NBA players. Guys are good in the NBA. This happens all the time when rebuilding teams just add young guys, add G League guys, and their team sucks. Adding good NBA players won't hurt your team. Malik Beasley won't be stopping you from getting a high draft pick next year. But he will give you a chance of developing your young guys, letting guys like Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren and Asor Thompson and Ron Holland be more comfortable. I really like the signing. Another big signing they had was Tobias Harris, who I know is kind of a controversial player, especially among 76ers fans, and I get it. He doesn't show up in big games, right? We've seen it time and time again. But I think it's important to note that for the Pistons, he doesn't need to show up in big games. They're not going to be asking Tobias Harris hey man, we need you to hit a big shot in the Eastern Conference Finals. You're not going to expect that from him. What he's out there to do is just be another scorer for you, and that's something that the Pistons really haven't had, is guys who can put the ball in the basket. They have a lot of defenders, they have a lot of hustle guys, they have a lot of spot-up shooters, but they haven't had the guys where given the ball and he can score, and I still believe Tobias Harris can do that. He's a modern 4. I've seen the Pistons start a lot of guys at the 4 that aren't really 4s. We've seen Isaiah Stewart and James Wiseman get run at the 4. Just interesting lineups that haven't worked all that well. Having an actual traditional power forward at this point, that's what Tobias Harris is. He can shoot threes. He has the midi game. At times he can defend. I really like the signing. I think he's going to work well off your star, who is Cade Cunningham, and I don't think he's going to necessarily take shots away from any of your young guys either. Now, I didn't love the Pistons draft. Ron Holland is one of those prospects this year where I was not super high on him. He's the typical super athletic, tall wing who can defend and jump out the gym, but he's not really polished, doesn't have the jump shot. And those prospects always scare me. Also, that you drafted Asor Thompson last year, who was kind of the same mold. Obviously, Asor has more, playmaking and is the better defender in my opinion, and probably the better athlete. So I think Ron Holland's probably just a worse Asor Thompson. So it was just kind of a weird pick to me. It's not necessarily taking them out of contention to make the play-in, but it's just something to note. I didn't love their draft, so not everything they did in the offseason I was in love with, but most of the stuff I did like. Besides the draft, I would expect Cade to be better. I'm going to expect Asor to be better. Jaden Ivey, I want to take a step. So they have, interesting young guys who I would expect to get better next year. And if they do get better, we look around the Eastern Conference and we go, a lot of teams got worse. It would be almost hard not to make the play-in. And this might, I might be jinxing them, but I really look at the East, it's going to be hard not to make it. I look at teams like the Hawks. The Hawks got worse. The Chicago Bulls got, way worse. They traded DeMar DeRozan. Lonzo Ball's coming back. We don't know how he's going to be. Zach LaVine might get traded. Who knows what's going on with that. The Nets, who were always in those conversations for the play-in, they got significantly worse, trading Mikal Bridges. Wizards aren't going to be good next year. You look at all those bad teams, the Pistons look better than those guys in my opinion. Now, do they make any noise in the playoffs? I would guess not. I think they're going to match up with the Knicks or the Celtics or the Sixers or, one of those top teams. They're not going to beat any of those guys, but, it's a step in the right direction. Rebuilds are a slow progression to the top. And oftentimes, they don't work because teams are too worried about not improving. They're like, oh, well, we need to get the next pick and the next pick and the next pick. And they get to that point where, well, we have all these picks, none of them have really hit, and we're just bad. You add good vets onto your young guys, and they'll be better. I mean, it's a recipe that almost works every time. The Pistons are in a very good position. I liked all the moves they made, except really the draft. But once again, the draft is so hard to predict, especially this year's. Who knows? Overall, I really like the Pistons offseason. I really like their chances of making the play-in and even the playoffs next year. I'm very excited to see what they do. Okay, guys, it's time to let me know. Are the Detroit Pistons ready to take that next step, or are they going to be really bad again? I don't know. Let me know.